Coming up on this episode of DL Weekly, the volunteers make an impact. Halloween time begins.
A comedian returns to his magical beginnings. New novelties materialize. Tage and Teresa finish their conversation with Chuck Schmidt and Kevin Rafferty, and more. DL Weekly starts now.
Welcome to Toad Hole. To ensure a safe and glorious drive in your motor car, remain firmly seated with your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside. Watch your children, and do try to drive more carefully than James and Vern. Ta-ta!
Hello and welcome to this episode of DL Weekly for the week of August 20th, 2025. I'm Teresa Urban.
And filling in for Tage while he and James are away on vacation, I'm producer Vern. We would like to thank everyone who supports the show. This week, we would like to give a special shout-out to Bailey H., who is a new supporter of the show, and also to Evelyn C., Sandra A., and Michael F. for their continued support of the show. If you would like to help support the show and get ad-free versions of each episode, access to our supporter-only chat, and a bunch of other awesome perks, head on over to dlweekly.net/support and become an official weekly tier.
Now let's get to the news.
Extra, extra! Read all about it! DL Weekly reports from intrepid correspondents Tage and Teresa. You heard it here first, ladies and gents. Breaking news!
Volunteers came together to donate and collect over 68,000 school supplies for Anaheim elementary schools. This was a record year, marking the most amount of school supplies ever donated to Orange Grove Elementary School. If that wasn't magical enough, during a staff meeting, the Disney ambassador Raoul plus Mickey Mouse surprised over 100 teachers and faculty at Orange Grove Elementary. They were there to thank them for their hard work and dedication, plus gift them all complimentary park tickets for themselves and one guest to go and enjoy the 70th celebration at the Disneyland Resort.
That is awesome.
Isn't that incredible? So Disney has had this partnership and each year supports the local schools by doing a school supply drive. So that means cast members are helping with collecting donations, sorting donations, but then the fun part is they actually get to go to the school to present all of the goodies to the schools as well. I think it's such a cool thing that Disney does to give back to the community. This is just one of the many ways that the volunteers work each year to give back. And I just think it's so fun and so cool.
Yeah, no, it's always so heartwarming anytime that you hear about, you hear so much about, corporation moved into town and just took up all the real estate and blah, blah, blah. But this is a situation where the corporation is there in town and they're giving back to the community and really making a difference for these schools and, helping out like this. That's just awesome.
Yes, it is for sure.
Well, Halloween time officially begins this week on Friday, August 22nd. Decorations have been creeping into the parks. Disney California Adventure had their full spooky transformation, and the first Oogie Boogie Bash party happened this past Sunday night. Over in Disneyland, creepy fan favorites like the Halloween Tree and Haunted Mansion Holiday are popping up, and the transformation will soon be completed.
This is always such an exciting time, the transformation between two holidays. I think I enjoy this transformation the most because I don't feel like Halloween time ever creeps in on another celebration, whereas in recent years, and we'll probably experience this when we go ourselves in October, the wintertime holidays have kind of started creeping in onto the Halloween festivities. Yep. I just realized that we might actually be there to celebrate Halloween, but they may have already decorated the castle with snow on it. So we'll see how that goes.
Yep.
But it's always fun. This is a weird year, though, with Oogie Boogie Bash having a party start before the official start and kickoff of the Halloween times, but it looks pretty fun. So we will actually, I'm getting ahead of myself because the next story is all about Oogie Boogie Bash, which this will be your first time going.
It is, yes. But to go back onto the decorations and stuff,
yes.
Wasn't it my first time at Disneyland was the Haunted Mansion Holiday was already overlaid?
Your first ever time going to Disneyland was in the fall. So yes. Yeah. Your first time experiencing the Disneyland Haunted Mansion, was
with the Haunted Mansion Holiday, yeah. So it had to wait till our second time going that I actually got to see regular Haunted Mansion. So yeah, I really enjoy when they do start doing all the the spooky stuff, the Halloween stuff. So I'm excited that we'll be going in October. We'll get to see all the stuff up, and for the people that really enjoy Halloween stuff, this is a good time of year. So get out there if you get a chance.
Yes, it is. Well, and speaking of fun, the first Oogie Boogie Bash party was this past Sunday night. Many of our favorite villains returned, including Hades, Ernesto de la Cruz, and Agatha Harkness. But making his Bash debut is Syndrome from The Incredibles. His treat trail is located at the Pixar Pier Bandshell. Judge Doom, just a note, he is also returned, but his treat trail has shifted this year. He can actually be found over in the Hollywood backlot area by stage 12, which then we'll just kind of add on. That is where the mini Daisy and Clarabelle dressed as the Sanderson sisters had been. They've actually made their way over, and they're closer to like Paradise Bay area instead. So there's been some shifting around, but your favorites are all still there. We do need to take a moment of silence because I was holding out all hopes, all dreams, and this weekend when they had the official first party, arguably the best and my most favorite villain did not return, sadly. Madam Mim is not part of the Oogie Boogie Bash this year, and I think it's a shame because she was wonderful, and you didn't get to ever see her.
I've seen all the videos that you've taken of her, and
I love her.
And I saw the video of you interacting with her because she recognized that you were dressed as her, and
she was
I'm
fantastic.
sad I don't get to see her.
So shout out to Madam Mim. You may be gone from the Oogie Boogie Bash, but you are not forgotten.
Now,
you will live on in our Disney hearts.
Personally, I'm very excited to see Syndrome going into a completely different nerdverse here. If there's any fellow View Askew fans out there who would recognize the voice of Syndrome was Jason Lee from any of the View Askew movies, Mallrats, and all the So any Jay and Silent Bob movie, Jason Lee has had at least a bit role in any of those, and he was the voice of Syndrome. And first time I saw Incredibles, I totally geeked out. I'm like, oh my God, this is a kid that's obsessed with comic books, and Jason Lee in Mallrats played a guy that was obsessed with comic books. This is too perfect to have him voicing him. And so I've always had that nerdness about me that I've always loved the Syndrome character, even though he is the villain. He's like one of my favorite villains, and so I'm geeking out that I get to see Syndrome, and I hope that whoever they have voicing him as the character does a good job of mimicking that Jason Lee voice. Steve Martin has returned to his magical roots and celebrated his 80th birthday last week at Disneyland. He was there to film a scene for an upcoming project. Filming took place at the Main Street Magic Shop, which is where he worked when he was a cast member when he was 15 years old.
Isn't that wild? I mean, I knew he worked at the Magic Shop. I didn't realize he was 15 when he was a cast member there, though.
And, I mean, I knew that he had some Disney roots and whatnot, but to take it all the way to being a cast member, I was not aware of that at all. Yeah,
he worked at the counter at the Magic Shop there on Main Street. So
very cool.
He's talked about it several times. He's been, I think he was part of it was maybe the 50th anniversary special, and kind of like reprised his role there. He's very proud of his cast member roots. There's no details as to what this project was about. However, some speculation online is that is it a cameo for the Oswald show that has been filming in the parks for the past couple of weeks? If it's a cameo for that, if it's something separate, we don't know specifics, but Steve Martin was in the parks and doing some filming, so we will see what this special project is all about, hopefully soon. Well, PhotoPass is getting an upgrade. The team has been swapping out their old Nikon cameras and replacing them with new full-sensor Sony cameras. Now, I am not a camera connoisseur myself, but I love that PhotoPass and the PhotoPass photographers are getting some love, and they're getting some new equipment out with the old and with the new. Hopefully, this means that we're going to have, better, crisper pictures, and they're going to be better for the cast members to work with. Hopefully, it's just a plus all around for everyone.
Disney Eats Instagram teased more Halloween novelty items that will be available around the resort soon. The popcorn bucket features everyone's favorite blue alien, Stitch, dressed as a mummy and ready for trick-or-treating. Starting on Friday, the Victor Geist Spectral Sipper will bring to life the Haunted Mansion's organ player. The Sipper retails at $34.79 and will be available at the Stage Door Cafe and Harbor Galley.
Yes, we have specific details for the Sipper, but no specifics as to how much the Mummy Stitch popcorn bucket will cost or where it is that you can find him. But he will be available actually at Walt Disney World, the Disney Cruise Line, and Disneyland. So that's pretty fun and exciting.
Very cool.
He's cute. He's got his little like trick-or-treat jack-o'-lantern pumpkin overflowing with candy. He's got a fistful of candy in the other hand.
Very cute. And honestly, who doesn't love Stitch?
He is adorable.
Yes.
I, of course, am so excited for the Haunted Mansion theme sipper that's coming out. This is probably more of a need than a want because I already have the Madame Leota sipper from several years
It's true.
back.
Yep, you do.
The Hatbox Ghost sipper from years more recent. So I think he needs to get added to my collection.
It's going to have to go on the shelf with the others.
He looks so good. And the teaser video that they did on Instagram. Oh,
I mean, currently
very, very
there
good.
are gaps between things on that shelf.
Oh, yes.
So we
there's
need
always
to
space to fill.
Yes, yeah, we definitely need to fill the spaces.
But isn't he cool? Like how
No,
he
it's-
looks translucent.
It's very cool, honestly.
His organ is glowing. But yeah, so fun fact, if you didn't know, the organ player at the Haunted Mansion has a name, and his name, Victor Geist. So kudos.
Which
I love when
was
they
new
do.
to me. So
I love when, see, fun little Haunted Mansion fact, lore, whatever you want to call it.
yeah.
The thing that I just think is so cool is that they're like, he's not like one of the main players. He's like not one
No.
of the characters or spirits that people think of when they think of the Haunted Mansion. So I just think that it's so neat that they're doing this sipper to honor him and to kind of showcase some of those more smaller but much very, very important ghosts in the mansion.
Well, yeah, I mean, without him, you have nobody playing the organ, and
know.
that's like the whole ambiance.
Who would be dancing in the ballroom if it wasn't for Victor?
Or they'd just be dancing to no music, and that would just be
that'd be
weird.
That
So,
would be weird.
yeah.
But so it makes me like wonder like who's next? Like what spooky spirits next? Do we think it's like the I don't know, like the opera singer or the mummy or
okay, hot take. Does it have to be one of the spirits? What about the guy, the gravedigger?
it could be him.
I think that he and the dog deserve...
Bones. The dog's name is Bones.
Yes, Bones, yep. I think they deserve a little more love than they get.
Yeah, the caretaker and
Yeah.
his dog Bones. I feel bad. I'm blanking on the
I can't think of
caretaker's
his name either. I couldn't think of Bones' name, so... But yeah, I think, I mean, of course it is the Haunted Mansion and it's all about the spirits and all, but I think, I mean, they're there and they are very well-known characters that everybody knows where they are and whatnot. So I think it's appropriate to give them their own sipper at some point.
Okay, so according to the internet, because the internet's never wrong.
Oh, never.
When I just did
And-
try to do a real quick search, he's just referred to on Haunted Mansion Wiki as the caretaker, on Disney Wiki as the caretaker. There's lots of references to him as the caretaker. So, but I feel like he was given a name in the movies.
Yeah. It's right
So-
there, Silas Crump.
Oh, right there.
Yeah.
That's the
Which-
Walt Disney World Haunted Mansion caretaker.
So if I remember right from a previous Trivia Land question...
Here's one that
uh,
says his name's Horace.
So, what I remember from a Trivia Land question is at Disney World, you can clearly see outside of the mansion there are crates saying only to be opened by Silas Crump or
Oh, sure.
deliver to Silas Crump, or it's some, I
Sure.
forget the exact wording, but it specifically says Silas Crump, and that's where people get the name for him from is, it's the only living person here, so these crates must have been delivered to him. And now that I'm really thinking about it, I don't remember. Listeners, if you know more about the name of the Disneyland caretaker, feel free to send that in to us because I am blanking on it. So, as Teresa continues to try to look it up.
This is going to bother me. I feel like I need to turn in my Haunted Mansion fan card because his name escapes me. I've always referred to him as the caretaker, but I'm sure he has a name. I'm sure of it. The fact that I knew Victor Geist's name before
Sure.
the sipper
See,
gives me a little haunted.
This is why the caretaker needs to.
The dog's name's Bones.
This is why caretaker and Bones need to have their own sipper, because people need to know more about them.
I see many names have been put forward for the caretaker over the years, but the closest to an official one is Silas Crump.
And that's what it's saying for Disneyland.
Well, just generically.
Well, this calls for being a question for Trivia Land.
Yes,
so
it does. I feel like I need to do
devoted
do
Trivia
more
Land
research.
Listeners, help me out on this one, and we will get to the bottom of it and make it a question for the future when Tag gets back.
Now that we got way off track in our Doom Buggy, let's head on over to SnackChat.
My favorite place besides
Your
Trivia
favorite
Land.
Place.
I am Groot.
What do you mean you're hungry? Kraglin needs those pots for the rehydrator. We don't have time for snacks.
I am Groot.
Were you talking to Tage Teresa again? How'd they even get a hold of you?
I am Groot.
Fine. One snack. That's it.
I am Groot.
No, I haven't seen any churros. You gotta talk to Vern. And stop smiling.
So for this week in Snack Chat, I've got a couple of snack and food-related stories. But then I thought, since we might have some extra time on our hands, it might be fun for you all to hear Vern, who has not taken one little sneak peek at this. He has yet to learn about all of the churros that will be available for Halloween time.
Oh, my
so I thought we
goodness.
could have a planning session with Vern on his pre-churro thoughts, because you know he's going to try them, probably try them all.
The
maybe some
question
don't make the
isn't
cut.
which, the question is which order.
There you go. So we can maybe do a churro planning order. But before we get to the churros,
We always go left first.
before we get to the churros, we got to talk about one of my favorite treats at the resort, which is Dole Whip, of course. Well, Peach Dole Whip debuted on the 70th anniversary, so it debuted back in July, and very delicious. I was able to try some on that day when we were there experiencing the park. Very good. If you haven't had a chance, go ahead, try it. I highly recommend. I haven't heard of anybody that wasn't a fan, so it's good. If you like Dole Whip, this is a great one to try. However, something new that's coming is there's going to be a new sundae featuring the new peach flavor. So the new peach sundae adds a caramel drizzle, streusel, and a peach ring to a swirl of the Dole Peach Whip. It's very good. It's very refreshing. I'm curious what these additional flavors, especially, like, I'm trying to imagine what the caramel is going to taste like with it.
Oh, that's going to be great. That would be like a caramel drizzle on top of like a peach cobbler.
Yeah,
is what I'm getting with that. With the streusel in there too, because
sure.
the streusel is going to give it that crunchiness of the peach cobbler.
So this new offering is beginning today as this episode airs on August 20th. So if that sounds delightful to you,
do you remember
head on over to the Tropical Hideaway and get yourself a peach sundae.
Do you remember the January that we went to Savannah, Georgia, and we stopped at Peach World on the way down? Is the peach flavor similar to the Peach World sundaes that we had?
The flavor on that well to tell you.
Okay. Because that's what I'm envisioning in my head is we had those peach sundaes at Peach World in Georgia, and they were just so peachy because they were like actually made with the real peaches right there in Georgia, and it was just
I don't remember what that specific treat tasted like. But the peach Dole Whip was very delightful.
Okay.
It wasn't overly sweet. It wasn't overly tart. It was a really nice blend of the two. So kind of like how the pineapple Dole Whip is.
Okay,
It's a really good blend. It tasted more like natural peach than like a fake candy version of peach, which was also really nice.
That's
but it was
what I'm
kind
remembering.
of an unexpected, like, ooh, I wasn't sure. I got it in a swirl. So then I had my trustworthy pineapple to save me just in case. But it was yummy.
Nice.
It was very yummy.
Okay.
Well, what new things happening over at Oga's, Vern?
Oh, Oga's Cantina is transitioning away from the reservation system and going to walk-up only.
That's right. They started today on the Disneyland website that they're shifting. They're going to be phasing out reservations and transitioning to walk-up only, and there will be a traditional standby queue beginning today as we record this August 19th. Disney also did share that even though they're no longer offering new reservations, existing reservations are still being honored. So if you do have a reservation for Oga's. Have no fear. It is still being honored. Just no new reservations will be made starting today. So that's pretty exciting. That's kind of crazy because Oga's, since they opened, has had reservations. It was reservations only for a long time. Then it was kind of a mix of reservations and walk-up, and now we're walk-up only. So that's exciting.
Well, it does give me some concern. Does that mean that interest in Oga's has waned? And no,
I don't think so. I think that's good news because it's more of a like enjoyable spot to go to and not the high demand craze.
Sure.
So I don't think that there's less people going. I think the way in how people visit Oga's has changed.
Okay.
Instead of making sure that you like, okay, we were able to get, we had to get a reservation and we have to be there at 10 a.m.
Sure.
Now it's hey, we're in Batu. Let's go grab a drink at Oga's. Like
Sure.
It's a more, which feels more in universe since, right? Batu's supposed to kind of be like a lived in space.
Right.
I don't think the normal citizens of Batu have to make reservations at Oga's, but us visitors did. So it's nice that we're being treated more like the locals, right?
Yes. Yeah, very much.
All right. So churro talk. Well, a little pre-churro chat with Vern, since we have not been to the parks yet for Vern to be able to actually try these, but it's a little pre-planning churro chat with Vern. No, churro talk with Vern.
I can never remember. Is it churro talk or churro chat?
Churro talk.
Yeah.
Churro chat
it's
also
like turtle
works
talk.
well. But yeah, turtle talk, but yes.
But
so
turtle talk has the alliteration of turtle talk.
I know, that's why
and
it's hard
churro
to know.
chat is anyway.
Churro corner, churro time, whatever you want to call it. But we're talking churros with
the important thing is we're talking churros.
Yes, there you go.
And that is important.
So over at Disneyland, these are the churros here that they have announced, which look at this. You're going to have a hard time, I think, because there's a lot.
Oh, this is going to be an expensive trip.
This is just Disneyland. Right?
I know.
Remember, this is just the one park.
Yep.
So of these that you're quickly looking through, oh, good. Never mind. I did a bad job and I did not cut it off at a good spot. So there's some popcorn in there too. So here's your churros right here. That's a little more manageable. Okay. So of these churros, is there anything that is like standing out to you of a like?
Well, honestly, as I'm looking at the seasonal churros, I'm seeing some that are just kind of okay. They've done it before. They're just kind of renaming it, retheming it. But I've had that flavor before. But one that's kind of bouncing out to me because they've done similar in overall flavoring, but they've really changed up the actual delivery system. The Strawbatty Churro is a strawberry-filled churro rolled in chocolate cookie dust and drizzled with cream cheese sauce topped with a chocolate bat. So I have not had many, if any, of the filled churros.
I don't know if they've had a filled churro.
Yeah, I'm really racking my brain, and I don't think I've actually had a filled churro before. Like, I've had a strawberry churro where they rolled it in strawberry sugar, or they did a strawberry drizzle over the top of it. But a filled churro, that is sounding very nice.
Like your number one pick for Disneyland.
The decorative of the little chocolate bat, as I'm looking at the picture of it, this is a very pleasing to the eye and very tempting to the palate churro that I'm very much looking forward to. It immediately popped off the screen at me and said, this needs to be had. I'm also very excited, just looking at things really quickly, that citrus churro. Mm-hmm. It's a churro tossed in citrus orange sugar.
And you can get a blueberry lemon dipping sauce along with it.
Yeah, citrus is not a type of churro that I believe I've had the pleasure of before. There was a blueberry lemon churro that I had over by Guardians 2 trips ago. That was delightful, but that was not strictly citrus. That was just citrus as more of like the added flavor to really make the blueberries pop. So excited to find out what comes of just a straight up citrus churro. So that's a definite go-to that I'm going to be checking out.
Here are some of the churro offerings over in DCA. So there was a pumpkin pie churro at the Cozy Cones, but here are the rest of the churros.
Okay, so over by Terran Treats, we see the Celestial Chocolate Churro, which is the churro rolled in cocoa sugar, topped with pistachio cream, chocolate sauce, crispy phyllo dough crumbles, and crushed pistachios.
Is that your number one most anticipated?
Pistachios. When do you get pistachio cream and pistachio crumbles on something as sweet as the
A
churro. I mean,
yeah.
and a pistachio you don't normally think of as being a savory so much as like, I mean, I hope they're roasted pistachio, because that would actually really be getting into that savory category, and then adding that to the sweetness and the doughiness with the churro itself. The potential there is just wonderful. Oh, scroll back up. Was that creme brulee I saw?
A creme brulee cold brew, but yes.
Oh, I'm so excited that might be a creme brulee
creme brulee cold brew.
Okay, but can we dip the churro in it?
Sure, why not?
Okay.
You could even get a pumpkin creme brulee cold brew martini if you wanted to dip your...
Now, you see, I'm thinking, since we'll be over by the Cozy Cone anyway,
I mean,
picking
why
up the
not?
pumpkin pie churro, which, I mean, it can't be fall and the fall season without getting something pumpkin pie, right? So you get your classic churro topped with pumpkin cream and pie crust pieces. So that, sounds a little basic, right? But I'm thinking with that, you're basically making a pumpkin pie using churro as a crust. What could be more wonderful, right? And then you get your creme brulee cold brew and you dunk the churro in it.
I'm just going to go for the pumpkin creme brulee cold brew. Combining the two sounds a bit much for me, but, you do you.
Okay.
You do you.
Okay.
You let us know how it goes. So those are your two most anticipated. Was the pistachio one over in DCA?
In DCA, the pistachio, no, the strawberry was over by Buzz
So
Lightyear.
the strawberry was your most anticipated for Disneyland.
I'm excited to find out what the pistachio really has to offer, especially if it's a roasted pistachio. I think that's going to be absolutely delightful.
Yes. But do you
And
think for DCA, though, is that the
that one really
that
leapt off the page at me? Yep.
So that's the one. Have you had the Fluffer Nutter churro, the one that is peanut butter marshmallow churro? They've had it a couple of times.
I don't believe I've had the honor yet.
It's very messy, but it's very delicious. So we'll definitely need to make sure you try that too.
Of course, yeah. I'm not actually going to eat a real meal. I'm just going to be scarfing down churros.
You're surviving
the whole
on
time.
churros for the week.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Well, if you enjoy listening to the show, please consider rating and reviewing the show on your podcast app. It helps other Disney fans become weekly tiers and part of the community.
DLWeekly announces the boarding of the Trivia Express, non-stop star speeder service to the moon of Endor. All passengers, please prepare for immediate boarding.
So before we enter Trivia Land, I'm just going to fess up here. I totally just added churro talk with Vern to sweeten them up. So maybe since I'm in Trivia Land all by my lonesome, be a little nicer to me.
Well, with that being said, welcome to Trivia Land, where the questions were already chosen before you got me into churro chat.
Bad timing. Bad timing on my part.
Teresa, how you feeling tonight?
Well, my plan has backfired. So, we'll see.
All right. Well, our listeners are absolutely wonderful, and they have sent great questions in for you. I enjoyed looking these up and double checking everything, and I think you're gonna do okay. Honestly, they're good stuff.
All right.
This is good.
All right.
Just knowing your depth of interesting
don't
knowledge.
Put that cart before the horse.
Okay. All right. We'll just see how you do. Okay. All right. Your first question from listener Kim. When did the Skyway permanently close at Disneyland?
No.
Kim gave specific date with the number. I will accept just the month and the year, of course.
Oh, boy. Okay. Well, it was more recent than one would have thought. One being me, who never got to experience the Skyway. It was one of those things that I was alive when it closed, so I could have experienced it as my tickle in my brain, which is not very helpful. But we're going to go with, I don't know the month, but we're going to go 96. I could be way off, but that's what I'm going with.
1996. Final answer.
Final.
All righty. Your third regular round question from listener Shanna D. Can you name the 3 hosts of Disneyland opening day broadcast?
Oh, gosh. If Tage were here, he'd be able to.
Because he's old and he was there.
I don't remember the other two's names. The only one I ever remember is Ronald Reagan.
That's 1 out of 3. Well done.
That's all I got.
Okay. Your fourth regular round question from listener Christian S. There were 2 TWA moonliners originally created. One ended up in Disneyland. Where did the other one go?
Oh, it went back to... Oh, man. It's... Okay. So I think TWA kept it and they put it on top of a building. Like one of their corporate offices building or something like that.
Is that your final answer?
That's my final answer.
Okay. I'm glad you're writing these down. Corporate office of TWA,
Corporate
that's what
office.
we're writing down? All right.
Oh, we know that's not right. Okay, go on.
All right. And your bonus question from listener Lauren G. What phrase is written in front of Sleeping Beauty's castle, and what is the name of the symbol?
Oh, no. The family crest is there. What is the symbol? Like, are you talking on the ground? There's a compass on the ground. Like, before you go over the bridge. That's gotta be what we're talking about. But I don't know what the saying is. But there's a compass.
Okay.
So there's half of my answer for you.
But you can't think of the phrase.
Nope, can't think of the phrase.
All right. Final answer, can't think of the phrase, but you know there's a compass.
Yes.
All righty. Well, listeners, how did you do listening at home? How do you think Teresa did? If you stick around until after the discussion, we can all find out together.
Well, welcome back and listen in as we continue our talk with Chuck and Kevin. So let's kind of talk about Marty for a minute. I mean, I know we've been talking about Marty, but just kind of like his career and his timeline at the Walt Disney Company, like where he started versus then how he became, the head of Imagineering and then all the way through to being a global Imagineering ambassador.
Yeah, he was a college student at UCLA. He was about to become the editor of the Daily Bruin, which was UCLA's newspaper. And he knew a gentleman named Johnny Jackson, who was a UCLA alum and who started working at Disneyland, obviously before the park was open. And Walt came up with the idea that he wanted to publish a 1900s themed newspaper to be sold to guests as they came in, to Main Street. And the paper would be called the Disneyland News. And Marty came in for an interview, and he was hired to produce a newspaper that looked like it was from the early 1900s, middle America type, newspaper. He was given 1 month to come up with that. And Walt loved it. Walt loved the whole concept, and it was sold on opening day. It was sold, for several years on Main Street. A Disney legend named Tom Nabby was actually hawking those newspapers outside of Disneyland as a 14 or 15-year-old.
We just saw him on the 70th. He was part of the little cavalcade celebration.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he would. I'm sure he always goes to the anniversary events. Yeah. I mean, he's quite a character. But Marty, went back to school, got his degree. He actually wanted to become a sports writer. He covered the UCLA Bruins basketball team. John Wooden was the head coach back then. A few years after Marty left, UCLA won like a number of national titles. They had Lou Alcindor, who became Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. They had Bill Walton. They had a ton of stars. They won national championship. Marty respected John Wooden a lot. He used to go to his practices, and he was really thrilled with the fact that he could see John Wooden's coaching style, which he really admired. He began working in their public relations department after he graduated. He was offered a job, and he said, sure, why not? He was the kid back then. He was the kid because a lot of these gentlemen were, obviously older and had more experience in the working world. But he fit right in. He became really close friends with a gentleman named Jack Lindquist, who became the president of Disneyland many, many years ago. He and Jack and another gentleman named Milt Albright came up with a number of ideas to publicize Disney, because Marty often said Disneyland was not a slam dunk in the beginning. They were very conscious of the fact that, this could fail. Like if we don't do things to really publicize the park. This could fail. They came up with grad nights. They came up with a magazine called Vacation Land Magazine, which was distributed throughout the Southern California, Nevada, Arizona area. They would put these magazines, I think it was 4 times a year, and they would put them into the racks in hotels and motels. They didn't just publicize Disneyland. They would publicize Knott's Berry Farm and Catalina Island and the variety of attractions that were available in Southern California just to lure people into Disneyland. Obviously that worked. and Marty and Jack became the best of friends over the years. They parted ways. At the early 1960s, Marty was asked to go to work on the World's Fair. So he left the publicity department. Coincidentally, there was a void there, which was filled by Charlie Ridgway, who was covering Disneyland for a variety of Southern California newspapers, and he fit the role. He fit the role perfectly. But Marty, went to work at the World's Fair. He told a great story about how at the Ford Magic Skyway, he was responsible for placing the speakers along the track route of the automobiles. And he would, put an X on the floor or whatever. And he came back literally 2 nights before the opening day. And a painter had walked through and said, what's this doing here? And he covered up all the marks.
Oh, no.
So Marty had to go back to redo all those marks. Obviously, the World's Fair was a huge success. And as Marty told me, they had no idea what was really going on. Walt Disney and a lot of his top executives didn't think the West Coast brand of entertainment would fly on the East Coast. So the World's Fair became a proving ground for that. Like if people liked our shows in New York City, which is a tough audience to begin with, we can move to the East Coast. So when the World's Fair opened in April of 1964, Walt Disney had many of his top lieutenants, including his brother, in Florida buying land at the time. So it proved, like the World's Fair showed to him that, our brand of entertainment will be acceptable on the East Coast. And that's when they really went gung-ho on the Florida project, as they called it. Obviously, Marty rose through the ranks of WED Enterprises, soon to become Walt Disney Imagineering. And one of the great stories that he told me was, after Walt Disney World opened, and after all of the publicity going into the opening of Walt Disney World was they were going to create a city of the future, a utopian city of the future on virgin land, and we're going to change the whole scope of the way cities are built in the United States. They're going to be efficient. They're going to be clean running. They're going to have various modes of transportation that didn't involve cars. Like the car culture, unfortunately, as Kevin knows, was huge in the 50s and 60s, but it created, urban blight, basically. New York, I don't know if you've ever been to New York City, but it's, it can be chaos. In Los Angeles, can be chaos because there's so many cars and trucks and buses. And so they established Walt Disney World, the Magic Kingdom, as a destination resort, which was a pretty big thing unto itself, because there had never been a place where people could just go and enjoy a wide assortment of entertainment and then go home. It was a destination resort, and Card Walker had taken over the running of the Disney company. Card Walker was coincidentally the gentleman who hired Marty Sklar when he was when Walt was looking for somebody to do the Disneyland news. Card came to him and said to him, "What are we going to do about Epcot?" And as Marty said, it was the start of 8 years of figuring out what we want to do with Epcot, without Walt Disney's obviously guiding hand. So that was kind of a key moment in Marty's career, like the whole creation of a second theme park. They didn't want to do another, Magic Kingdom style park. They wanted to do something just different. And they knew at some point, they knew they couldn't build a city of the future without Walt Disney's guiding hand. They didn't want people walking up to houses and looking in and, like guests, like, hey, what are they cooking for dinner? What's on the menu tonight? So they had to come up with a lot of different ideas, which obviously morphed into, what Epcot became. Obviously once Marty, became head of Imagineering, there was a move to, build parks, and really expand the company. And so he had a tremendous influence on the 90s and in the early 2000s. And so
hey, Jack, I was going to, if I may, I want to tell you, I'm so glad you brought up Jack Lindquist because, they were such dear friends. And I was at Marty's window ceremony at Disneyland when they gave him his window, above City Hall, and Jack was there. Shortly afterwards, Jack passed away, and he famously wrote his own memorial service, which they had at the Disneyland Hotel. And of course, it was just this wonderful tribute. But Marty wanted the last word because their entire relationship, Marty went to UCLA, and Jack went to USC. And so they were button heads about UCLA, SC, their entire friendship for years and years and years. That's all they'd talk about is SC and UCLA, SC, UCLA. So Marty was the last speaker at Jack Lindquist's memorial service, and he gets up on stage and he says, well, I finally have the last word, Jack, about UCLA. There's nothing you can say about SC. There's nothing you can do. I'm here to talk about UCLA. And then the curtains opened behind Marty, and the entire SC marching band was there and played the school's theme song and drowned Marty out.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
He seemed like such a perfect personality and person to kind of take over, because right when Walt passed, a lot of, everyone at the Walt Disney Company was just kind of like feeling a little lost. And it seems like he really gave WED and Imagineering that sense of direction again, and kind of helped be that person to kind of like go around and really like encourage and uplift and help people kind of, progress and move forward. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because he did do that. I mean, he picked up the ball.
Mm-hmm.
The man was fearless. At least he created that illusion that he was. But he believed in all of his Imagineers. He knew that we could do anything. And like I said, he was large and in charge in the Epcot days. But the whole thing is a miracle. It really is. I mean, think about the scope and scale of that project. Yeah. And the technology that we had in those days and stuff. And Marty took it on, and and Roy Disney was so appreciative of that. And in fact, when Walt first opened WED over down 3 miles from the Disney studio, Marty has another story where Walt asked him to go get his brother. And Marty said, well, all I have is my old Volkswagen Bug. And Walt said, I don't care what you have, go get Roy. And so Marty went down to the studio, and he talked Roy into getting into his car, and Roy wasn't too happy about going, but Marty's car broke down halfway between the studio and Imagineering. Oh, no. And Roy got out and walked back to the studio and never did make it. So then, the kind of the full circle thing where Roy took on the responsibility of delivering his brother's vision, and Marty was so much a part of that. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
I've often referred to Marty as like a direct conduit to Walt Disney himself, and there weren't too many people, who survived, obviously years later, who had that link to Walt.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. What's so amazing from hearing all of your stories too is how many people we've talked to in the past, and Marty's, I honestly feel silly not knowing this, but like the fact that, like, I had no idea where Marty started in the company. For some reason, he's just always kind of been the head of Imagineering. And it never dawned on me, like, well, where did he come from? Because he didn't just come in that way. But we hear so many stories, especially of like early Walt Disney Company kind of stories in early parks days. The people started in the park working, at a popcorn cart or selling, ice cream or whatever. And then years later, they end up, like Marty, like running Imagineering. It's like, what?
Or like Kevin, you go from the plaza into Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway.
Yeah. And that's just so cool to have a company. And, I get the feeling that like, it's still possible to do stuff like that at the company, that they're always on the lookout for creativity and imagination and kind of drive and everything and talent.
and they'll foster some of that going into this. It's really cool to hear the backstory, because I honestly didn't know that, and I had never thought about where Marty had come from. So thank you for sharing.
Well, the common denominator is that we all love Disney. We all love the park. I mean, Tony started scooping ice cream at Carnation. I started washing dishes. Marty started, in PR and all that kind of stuff. We were there because we loved it. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of turn that passion and that love into, going a little step further.
Yeah, I was going to say, Card Walker, who ended up being the CEO of the Disney company, started in the mailroom at Walt Disney Studios.
Yeah.
And he was interrupted by World War II, and he served in the Navy during World War II. And then he, worked his way up once he came back, and obviously rose through the ranks.
Chuck and Kevin, would either of you mind sharing maybe some favorite Marty memories that you had during your years and the time that you got to spend with him?
Oh, wow.
You start, Chuck. I have so many. I'm trying to decide which one.
As I said, I was lucky enough to have several lunches and or dinners with Marty. One was he was giving a presentation to the Disney Vacation Club cast members in Celebration, Florida. And he, mentioned that to me in an email. And I said, gee, I'd like to go to that. And as soon as I mentioned that, my wife booked a flight, booked a hotel, booked a rental car. And it was like, oh, okay, I can go. And Ryan March, who is the editor of the Disney Files magazine for the Disney Vacation Club, contacted me and said, yeah, you can, we'll set everything up. I went to the presentation, but unfortunately, I don't know if you've ever been to Celebration. It's a maze of streets, and it's like every street is named Celebration Avenue, Celebration Boulevard, Celebration Street, Celebration this, that. And the DVC headquarters are located on Celebration Boulevard, and they break up. It's like a golf course that separates the road at some point. So I left myself plenty of time to get to Marty's presentation, but I didn't get there until like 5 minutes beforehand. So I parked the car somewhere in the middle of at the end of the parking lot. I ran in. Everybody loved Marty's presentation. He was so, generous and so knowledgeable. And afterwards, Ryan March invited me to go back to lunch to the Contemporary Hotel, because Marty was going to have lunch with him, and he also had to do a rehearsal because there was another D23 event the following day, so he had to rehearse his event. So Ryan said to me, "Why don't you just ride with us? Follow me to the Contemporary, and we'll have lunch together." And I had no idea where I had parked my car. I had no idea what color the car was, because I had gotten it like literally an hour before that.
Yeah.
And I was embarrassed. I have no idea where the car is, because, I was kind of frazzled. And Ryan said to me, well, just ride with Marty and I, and I have to come back here anyway. So I'll we'll find your car then. So it was great to just spend some time with Marty in the car. And they were talking about, the development of Orlando, the whole area since Disney World opened. Marty wrote a column for the Disney Files magazine, which was very well received and very, very good stuff. Like good historical stuff about Disney. We get to the Wave restaurant where we were going to have lunch, and Joe Rohde is sitting at a table on the phone, his phone pressed up against his non-earringed ear, and he waved to Marty, and he waved to me, and we sat down, and I had brought a book with me. My mother had recently passed away before that, and she had these two books from movie theaters. One was from Song of the South, and one was from Fantasia. It was like souvenir booklets you got when you went to the movie theaters back in the 40s. So I gave Marty the Fantasia book, and he was absolutely thrilled. He said, "I will treasure this. This is really, really something special." He really appreciated that. And then we walked over to the Contemporary. I had mentioned during lunch that I had tried to get press credentials to the D23 presentation, and they said, no, you can't, no. So Marty walked up to one of the people in charge and said, "My friend Chuck needs credentials for tomorrow's event. Can you get him?" "Oh yeah, no problem, no problem." So I walked out of there with my press credentials, and I showed up the next day, and so that's kind of a cool story.
Yeah.
That's very fun.
And you found the car?
Eventually, yes, we found the car.
It's not still sitting in celebration somewhere, and everybody's like, "What's going on with this car?"
No. It was returned on time.
How about you, Kevin?
Well, I have millions and millions and millions of Marty stories. He was such a big part of my life, but two kind of float to the surface, and just they're both really fast. But one is Marty did what I used to do, and whenever we had an event at Disneyland, we had a media meeting, and we were going to meet some journalists like Chuck in the Golden Horseshoe early in the morning before the park opened. Well, I got there about an hour before that, and because I love to walk around Disneyland by myself and just walk around, and I happened to see, I was coming, how you approach Frontierland, and I happened to see Marty in the distance to the left coming around from Adventureland. Marty had just had another surgery. He had a cane. You could tell he was walking very painfully, and I felt so bad for him. But he didn't see me see him, and he came up, and there was a piece of paper just to his left, and he painfully walked over, and he bent down. It killed him to do it. Picked up a piece of paper and threw it in the trash can. That's how much he loved Disneyland. It touched me so much. He just loved it so much. The other funnier memory was Marty wanted me to meet him backstage at a D23. We're going to do a panel together. And he said, I'll meet you at such and such a time in that area backstage. I said, okay, great. So when the time came, I was heading backstage, and there was an attendee of D23 there, and he had Disney tattoos. He was wearing like a tank top, and he had Disney tattoos all over. But the one I noticed was a tattoo of Marty's face on the side of his arm. I mean, I did a double take. It was Smiling Marty tattoo. And I thought, this is hilarious. I'm going to go back and tell him, because I'm just going to see him in 30 seconds, So I go backstage, and Marty's there, and he's sipping on a styrofoam cup of coffee. And I said, you're not going to believe it. There's a Disney fan outside, and he has a tattoo of your face on his arm. And Marty went, and he blew coffee everywhere.
Was he able to go run out and get that person? Or, I mean, we've been to D23. We know how hard it is to find someone.
We didn't go out, but his reaction was priceless. I mean, timing is everything, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's too funny.
See, I would have just grabbed the guy and be like, you're coming with me for real quick. Marty, look at this guy's arm. I mean, there's crazy things like that. I've seen where people will get famous. People will like sign their arm and then they'll go get it tattooed over. That stuff's crazy.
Why not? We're crazy Disney fans. This is what happens.
That's true.
We love you.
Yeah.
That's another thing, too, that I kind of wanted to talk about, too, is Marty seemed very, very... I mean, we've talked about a few different D23 fan events that he participated in just in the course of sharing, different tidbits about him. He was very generous with his time when it came to spending, connecting with fans and doing presentations and stuff like that. I know he went and did, I believe, the Pacific Northwest Mouse Meet, D23 events, all sorts of different things. So that was also very cool. And again, that just kind of shows like the passion that he had. It wasn't just a job or a career for him. He lived and breathed it. It was very much a part of who he was as a person.
Yeah, he absolutely loved the theme park guests. He really did. And he went out of his way many, many times to show that, and he really appreciated. I mean, he never took his role for granted. He never took the company for granted. He knew the value of the company in the parks, and he was so passionate about that. And he knew that none of this would matter if it wasn't for all the Disney fans who love to go into the parks. And he told us on many occasions, Walt was a showman. Walt was a storyteller. Walt wanted to immerse his guests into his stories, and that's why Disneyland came about. And we're going to honor that, and we're going to keep it going, and we're going to do it for the people that love the parks. And he didn't just say that; he lived it.
Yeah, I have a funny story about that. No, not a funny story, but kind of a touching story, actually. At his second appearance at the Ocean County Library in Toms River, Marty was walking across a courtyard in front of the library where he was going to give the presentation. And a family with a young girl walked up to him, and she had a drawing that she had made of Figment, because Marty was publicizing his One Little Spark book at that point. and she gave him the photo, and he was very appreciative. He goes inside, he starts his presentation by asking her to stand up and come to the stage. And he showed everybody the photo that she had drawn him, and her smile was, like ear to ear. And it just shows you what kind of a humble person he was, because, that was, his day, like he was, but he just stepped aside for a moment to really shine the light on her, because she had shown him a nice little kindness, and he obviously reciprocated.
That is really touching.
So fun.
Yeah, I think people forget everybody's human, right? Like, just because you have a cool job, or people look up to you, or you're a famous actor or something, or a famous Disney person or whatever, like, everybody's just a person, it's people forget that, there's people that charge up to people to take photos and do all this weird stuff. And it's like, you got to remember, these are people. How would you feel with these things? So something small like that, and being able, and honestly, in all the Disney events we've gone to, and all the people who have worked for Disney, who have these higher roles that people really look up to, every single one of them has been very humble and very, it's about the guests. It's about you. Like, this is just our job. We got lucky to be able to do this. And I just always think that that's so amazing that so many people can look up to these folks, and they're so humble about it. And I think that's really important. And actually, that maybe that's part of the job, is that you have to, be thinking about somebody else for the whole experience, not just something you're going to want. So thanks for bringing that up, Chuck. That was a great story for that. So I have a question for you, though. So I was thinking about, as you did all this research, and of course it was your history and all these notes and stuff, was there anything that you learned while putting the book together that you were surprised by, or something maybe you had forgotten about, or just something that was kind of unique and stood out to you?
Unique and stood out. There's a section of the book that I reached out, because Marty had given me so many emails and so many contacts, within the company. After he passed away, I decided to get everybody's reaction. Like, I obviously reached out to Kevin. I reached out to probably 20, 25 different Imagineers or people that Marty worked with over the years to get their responses. And so many, it just solidified in my mind how beloved he was by the people, in his orbit. Just so many different, a woman named Zofia Kostirko, who worked on Disney's Animal Kingdom, who actually wrote the foreword to my Animal Kingdom book, told a story about how her daughter became ill one night, and she had nowhere to turn. So she called Marty, and Marty immediately contacted a doctor friend of his, who Zofia says saved her daughter's life.
Wow.
So it was that kind of like caring that like solidified in my mind Marty's, aura, his being, his just a wonderful guy, and
yeah.
So I know we started our interview asking you 3 questions. I'm kind of curious, do either of you know if Marty had a favorite attraction and what it was?
Chuck, you know this, don't you?
Yeah, he loved It's a Small World because of the phrase in the Sherman Brothers song. There's just one moon and one golden sun, and a smile means friendship to everyone. Marty said to me, and he said that, at presentations, that what a wonderful world this would be if those words, came true.
Yeah.
So yeah, he loved the small world. He loved the Tiki Room. In fact, we had lunch with Marty at Club 33 in 2013, and we were walking past the Tiki Room, and I should have said to him, why don't we go in and just, like sit down and get your observation, and we just walked right past it, walked down the street. And to this day, I was like, why didn't you ask him to go into the Tiki Room?
You learned your lesson, because when you were at Disneyland with Kevin, you made sure to go to do his things too.
Oh yeah.
You're like, wait, I'm not passing these things up now.
Kevin owed me a trip on Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railroad. I was covering the opening night at Hollywood Studios.
Oh yeah.
So I was fortunate enough to be there when he was the spotlight was on Kevin, and the rest of the Imagineers who worked on the project with him. Mm-hmm. And he couldn't get away. I said to him, because I didn't think and go on the Tiki Room with Marty, you have to take me on Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway today. And he was just too busy, with the press release and all the ceremonies and stuff. We finally, rectified that situation back in January when we went on the Disneyland version of the ride. And he was gracious enough to tell us every detail that was put into the queue area, especially. So, yeah.
Yeah, when you have those opening day events, you have like these handlers that your life is not your own that day. They move you from here to there, and so no matter what you do, you have to kind of be led that day. So, but we did catch up, Chuck. We did go to the one in Anaheim.
Yes, we did.
So to get all the details of that queue, I'm actually a little sad. This is going to sound weird. I'm always a little sad if there isn't a line because I enjoy that queue so much that I'll just slowly walk through it because there's so many little fun nods to different things.
Just the posters. You could spend an entire time waiting in line just taking in all the details of just the posters, let alone the props and all the references.
The Mickey-shaped popcorn.
I will say that Goofy song, that disco Goofy song, works into my brain and it gets stuck in there. But
little earworm.
I love it though. Like I remember one of the first times we wrote it, and afterwards, like the whole rest of the trip, I was like singing that song. Which brings up actually a good point, because you're talking about at these press events, we've heard from a few different people we've spoken to that have worked at Disney doing attractions and stuff over the years, that this is kind of a more recent thing, that the creators and the people who work on these attractions are actually being recognized by the public for it. Because back in the day, it was kind of like, well, here's this new attraction, and like nobody knew who worked on it. So, I mean, did Marty ever talk about that and how that kind of changed? Like, I assume it was from the internet and the onslaught of Disney kind of allowing people to write books about things, and places like Theme Park Press and whatnot, that allowed people to kind of talk to more people and just kind of get out there. Now it seems like Disney really supports it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Marty was always of the mindset, like he always said there's one name on the door, Walt Disney, and Marty never took any credit for anything, although he could have for a lot of things. I don't really know what his exact opinion was about that. I know he celebrated and encouraged and let his Imagineers do what they wanted to do within reason. And it's an interesting point. At what point did people start taking credit for attractions and stuff? I mean, it's not like a movie where you get your name at the credits at the end, But I think Marty, in his heart of hearts, I think he always wanted to keep. Marty loved Walt so much, and I learned so much about Walt through Marty, that he always wanted to put Walt Disney at the forefront. And we're here with Walt Disney. It's Walt Disney Imagineering. Walt Disney's a name on the door, and that's the way it's going to be. So, to answer your question, I'm not sure when that happened and when that became, a little more slack. Maybe it was Disney fan demand, or when the internet came along and the world became a much smaller place, and social media and everything else. Back in the day, the word didn't get out as much as it does today. I mean, now we have video ride-throughs of Disneyland rides, and things are instant.
Yeah.
But back then they weren't. And, you never went to an attraction where you saw the Imagineers' names on a plaque, for credits, like in a movie.
Well, we one that really stands out to me is we met and spoke to Tanya McKnight Norris and Marceline at the Dreaming Tree Gala. Mm-hmm. And she was like, I don't know, I've lived like nobody knew who I was until I went on some podcast and they asked me about the wallpaper, and now everybody wants to talk to me about the wallpaper. She's like, I don't even remember if I did everybody was a team.
Yeah.
And so that's what I always just think about, though, is like, there all these people put this hard work in, and I assume it's nice to get some recognition that you've done something, and you could be like, other than just like with your friends and family, like I did that, like writing it with Chuck saying, oh, look, this detail, that detail.
Yeah. Those are the Marty notes.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
That's another thing I think was really cool. Like that, because he was from a time pre-internet, pre-email, that those notes exist. And I just think it's so cool that so many people have hung on to their Marty notes. Because when we were just at the Pacific Northwest Mouse Meet, Bob Weiss presented, he mentioned, and they talked about receiving Marty notes, and Tim Delaney also did too. And I was just like, that's just so neat that everyone, that those truly were very special, and so many people have saved those. Yeah, I think that's, but like nowadays, right? It's a text message or an email. So it's just a little, it's still personal, but it's not tangible.
Nobody's hanging up a text message on their wall. Yeah,
you're not printing. Well, maybe you could print.
Also, it's so personal, right? I feel like something like a signature, something handwritten is like the person took time to, because texting or typing is so quick, but like taking out a piece of paper, getting a pen, writing the thing, it's very personal.
It is. When I was working on a little quick project early on called Disney's America.
Oh, yes.
That didn't go through, but I went to Washington, D.C. I was on the team early on, and I went to the Presidential Library at the Smithsonian, and the docent said, name a president. And first one that came to my mind was George Washington. So it was like, Indiana Jones, it was like the warehouse. We walked for miles, and I had to put on little white gloves. And they handed me this little book, and I was reading this handwriting, and what it was George Washington's personal diary from the Revolutionary War.
Wow.
Holy cow.
This presidential library was filled with, handwritten documents and letters and things like this from all the presidents. What are they going to have now? Are they going to print emails? I don't know.
Right.
But it was just so cool that at that time in history, they collected all this stuff, and you could actually hold in your hand the thing that he did.
Wow.
It's such an amazing time.
We felt that way. We were fortunate. We happened to be in town at the right time. Like I said, we live in Wisconsin, and we got to visit the studios and get a studio tour and go into Walt's office. And the story that the tour guide was talking about was that 95% of the things that is in his office were his things. Like, they're not duplicates. They're not reproductions. They are his things. And for Disney fans, it was so amazing to just be in a room that you're like, you felt him because these were his things. And I don't know if you're going to feel that way, like you said, like you were saying, in the future with like printed out emails. I mean, the one thing we have now that we didn't have that's really nice is like video and audio of people. So we can actually see what they were like and hear what they were like. We were talking with the Walt a Magical Life animatronic that recently debuted. We were talking about how, one of the things that makes it so difficult is because we have video of Walt Disney, we have audio of Walt Disney. So if something isn't absolutely 100% perfect, we're aware of it, as opposed to like Abraham Lincoln, where it's like we have pictures, we have no idea what he sounded like or how he moved. So that's kind of a lot easier to get away with.
Yeah.
So,
but they did a wonderful job.
They did do a wonderful job. I don't know if there's an opinion either of you have on the show, if you've been able to see it or seen anything online about it. What your thoughts are on the new attraction?
I actually love the show.
Yeah.
It brought me to tears. I love the show so much. It's just, I think they did such a good job with it, and so respectful. And, there's so much, it was a labor of love. And, you can only do so much with technology because a human being is a human being. But just the bold idea of, there's been enough time now passed where you still have people like Bob Gurr who still know Walt, but there's other generations that don't know Walt. And so the purpose of the show was to say, hey, all of this started not because of a mouse, but because of a man. And this is the guy that started it all. And I remember when I did the rehab of the Carousel of Progress, I wanted to bring the song There's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow back instead of Now Is the Time. And I wanted to put that little video up front of Walt Disney. And I'll never forget, the painters out there stopped and they were looking at the video. And one of the guys says, is that Walt Disney? And the other one said, yeah. And he said, I'm going to have to bring my daughter over here. She doesn't know who he is.
Oh, see, it's important.
It's important. It's very important.
That was our takeaway too, is, looking at the entire experience, even from when you first walk in and see the wonderful display of his apartment and the furniture from the apartment. And then you go in, and then we kind of realized after the fact that it's about the man, but it's also celebrating just animatronics as well, because you have that wonderful display from the Walt Disney Family Museum. That's kind of like the beginnings of animatronics. And then you have this incredibly advanced Walt. That's, the next thing that you're going to see, but it does such a beautiful job explaining who he was. And I Tag was making fun of me because I was really surprised that they didn't kind of just brush over that the failures and how difficult things were. They talked about how he had to take, mortgages out on his own home to make sure that Disneyland would go and stuff like that. And family, yep.
Nothing was ever easy for that man. No. Nothing. And he just kept going, And I feel that because I worked with all the people, most of the people that he worked with early on through the parks, and with Marty, who knew him so well, and all the stories. I never met Walt Disney personally. My wife went to Walt Disney Elementary School in Anaheim, which is right on the other side of the fence of her house. And she met Walt a couple of times when he would come, and he would bring studio artists down to do characters on the walls of their cafeteria and stuff. And he would show up. So she actually met him.
That's fun.
But I feel that I knew him through all the people that worked with him. Mm-hmm. And it was like, for me, sitting in that theater and seeing him come to life, it was like, this is what everybody was talking about,
Yeah.
We were very fortunate and got to go. We were one of the first groups of the virtual queue on the 17th, so the day that it premiered. And so you're in there, with other people that are plugged in because they knew it was debuting that day and they knew about the virtual queue. So you have to assume, these people have knowledge of the theme parks and then, of course, of the man himself. But we're sitting there, and in that pre-show, I guess, before Waltz comes out, they're telling the story, and I'm hearing people kind of like they're, going, they're reacting to different things. So you can, that they're learning things. So even, bigger Disney fans were learning new information to appreciate his story more than what they knew before they walked in. And that was also really eye-opening and really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's surprising to me is they put me in that pre-show. I'm standing there looking at myself on the screen going, what?
You're like, wait a minute.
That must be kind of a weird reality of things like that. Mm-hmm. I will say, though, Kevin, I saw a review of the show, and one of the things that they thought would be a great addition of Walt at Disney World would be to put him in his blue cardigan in front of the Carousel of Progress in that first room, because they're like, they've got audio of him singing A Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow with the Sherman Brothers, and he could introduce the attraction. And what a great way to be able a place that Walt could be in Disney World, because there is no opera house in this, like there is at Disneyland, but the Carousel of Progress would be a great place to put Walt in Disney World. And I was like, that is a brilliant idea.
He's with Lincoln right now, which was a passion project of his. And I would say that the Carousel of Progress was also, that was another one that was a passion project of his as well. So
I'm excited to see, as with everything Imagineering does, things are just going to keep getting better and better as the time goes on. And I can't wait to see where they take this technology next, because it's so, there are a couple pieces of this that you really do forget that it's not a person on stage. And I think that's just magical and fantastic. And shout out to the team who did that. And the fact that it was Walt Disney makes it even better. And like you said, there's people that don't know who he was, and what better place to put that than at the front of his park.
Yeah. So Ted, you obviously love the show then.
I do. I do. Good. I was worried because I don't think Disney did it justice, because they did that little social media thing, and I think it was lit poorly. I think that it just wasn't filmed in a way that was very good.
It wasn't as good as it was in person.
And in person,
you have to see it in person.
Amazing. Yeah. And
you have to see it in person.
Awe-inspiring. And the beginning show that Teresa was talking about, the film, I thought was really wonderful. I really look forward to going back and spending time in the, like the museum part of the attraction, because we didn't get a lot of time to spend in there.
It was a very busy day.
Yeah. But I'm excited to look at some of the concept art and stuff, because like that stuff for Disney nerds, that stuff's just like amazing. The casual guest is like flying to get on Rise of the Resistance or something. And, all the crazy super Disney fans are like, let's learn about all the different ways this could have gone.
Well, and a lot of people don't know this, but there's a couple of pieces of concept art for Disneyland, kind of the bird's eye view down to the hub and all that was recently discovered.
Oh,
that's cool.
Mike Jusko, who works in the IRC, which is the Information Research Library at Imagineering, we have over 70,000 pieces of original concept art. That's where the original Herbie Ryman sketch of Disneyland is, hermetically sealed and, very very lovingly stored, and we have just amazing history there. He found a tube or something in a storeroom here just a few months ago and said, "What's this?" and opened it up, and there's all this original, concept art for the layout for Disneyland Main Street in the hub that you can see how it changed. So that's hanging up there now, and nobody would know that, but Mike just found that. Nobody's seen this before.
This reminds me of the archive story about how the custodial guy like dug the Mary Poppins snow globe out of the garbage. Like what? Like people are just like for fans like us, like you imagine that all these things have been from the beginning, pristinely taken. And then we've been to things where they've talked about, I think Becky Klein talked about it, that they got a bunch of boxes from Marty's house of just boxes and boxes and boxes of things. And they're like, we're going to be going through these things he didn't throw anything away. He kept a lot of stuff.
Didn't.
People are going to be going through this stuff for years to figure out all the stuff.
But like I don't know if it was what it was, but it was almost like he had foresight that these things were important and not to throw them away.
He didn't throw anything away. Bob Weiss called me after I retired and he said, "Hey Kev, do you think you'd want to come in and be in charge of all of Marty's stuff?" And I said, "No." You know what that entails? I mean, Marty came over here to my house one day and we still had a bunch of unpacked boxes and stuff. And my wife, Patty, was apologizing to him. I was sorry about all of this stuff. And Marty says, "Are you kidding? I'm renting 5 storage units to keep all my stuff in." So that would take like 2 lifetimes to go through. He kept everything. And I was at the open house at Imagineering just recently. They had a little open house. They have one about every 10, 15 years. And the lady who ended up being in charge of it was talking about it. It was so fascinating, and the things she's finding. And I said, "Did you find anything for me to Marty?" And she goes, "Oh, yeah, lots of stuff."
Well, I think we heard a story about how his wife was like, you can't be so she was like squirreling things in like all over the house.
Hiding stuff.
I can't even imagine. But man, it is a laborious job, I'm sure, to go through it and catalog and try to figure out what everything is. But also, like, it must be super cool to just be able to go through all of that history and all of this stuff over time, because we enjoy just the fraction of this stuff that we get to see.
Yeah.
And thankfully for people like Chuck and who write books and share information, like that gets more of those stories out there, which is really important, because there's a whole life of stuff, a whole lifetime of stuff.
Well, and who knows?
You, Chuck.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chuck.
I was gonna say, and who knows what they discover, right? Because he was there since the beginning, of the park. So there could be so many things that hasn't seen the light of day in decades.
Didn't we hear some comment over the weekend that like they were like, finding like all these cool things, and then there'd be like a
rubber band.
Well, they said that he loved rubber bands, which was like a big no because it's hard to get rubber bands off of things when they've degraded. But I think they said something about like there'd be like a used napkin or something in between all this stuff, and it's like, well, that's what happens when you have a bunch of stuff you collect over the years.
Yep. Probably,
It's crazy. I'm sure if people that are like that in life listening to this right now, I'm sure if you go in your box, you'll find stuff like that.
Just
it's not just
random something.
It's just part of being human.
Well, I want to be respectful of both of your time, since we're coming up on 2 hours already.
Wow, that went fast.
I know.
Didn't it?
It's like you get talking Disney and it's just like time just goes. So do you have any final thoughts about Marty that you'd like to share before we wrap up? Chuck, we'll start with you.
Final thoughts about Marty.
Or what are maybe some things that you hope, fans and future generations either remember or just know about the man?
I think, like Walt himself, I think as time goes on, we have to remember them. Like we can't, obviously they're gone, but their memory has to live on. There's a show or there was a show in Hollywood Studios, One Man's Life.
Yeah.
The story of Walt Disney. Obviously, there's nothing like that about Marty. So hopefully my book will kind of keep his memory alive and keep what he did important. And hopefully, people will, like you said, will learn something or learn a lot of things about him that weren't common knowledge. And,
Well,
hopefully his legacy will live on.
Yeah. The thing that I am so excited about with your book is that I've read Marty's books. So, right, it's one thing to talk about your life as you saw things, but it's an entirely different thing sometimes to have someone write a book about their memories of their time with you, because you just you see things different and you appreciate, different things that maybe, you don't recognize in yourself. So I'm really excited to read your collection of stories and memories of your time that you got to spend with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Marty, as we said, was a very special person. His first book, Dream It, Do It, was pretty much his biography. This I call kind of a sidebar to his biography, because obviously I'm not going to get into the details of his life, because he already did that with his first book. So hopefully, the stories that I unearthed will, serve as a learning tool, I guess, if you want to call it that.
I love your book, Chuck. I just really loved it, and you're right. It keeps his legacy kind of alive, and as somebody that worked with him and knew him and was a friend of his for decades, I knew all of his ins and outs and idiosyncrasies and joys and accomplishments and failures and things like that. And he was always so excited about doing stuff. I remember, I'll never forget when I pitched the idea for Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, and it was green lit in that presentation. I couldn't believe what happened. And after the meeting, Marty was standing there looking at me, and I said, "What just happened here?" He says, "What are you waiting for? Get to work." So that was kind of Marty's thing, is it was always get to work. There's so much to do, everybody. There's so much to do. Walt said Disneyland would always, never be complete as long as there's imagination in the world. I think Marty personified that. And he drew it. He was kind of like Walt in that he recognized stuff in us that we didn't even know we could do until he was kind of, pushing on us to do it. Get to work. And he was always available to us. And I think to answer your question, what I hope people, take away about Marty was that, think about it, he was there from the beginning. His magic touch touched, every single project. He was in charge of every single project that happened under his watch. And he was so influential and so inspiring to us, and he kept us going. And like I said, we didn't work for him because we were afraid of what might happen, or we were afraid of him, no, we worked with him because he was one of us. We loved him. He knew he supported us, and he did so much for the parks, and that's why we were there. And so, as time goes by, I hope people always remember that Marty, who actually worked with Walt and wrote for Walt and was a writer himself, a storyteller himself, was kind of the foundation for all the stories that came for years to come. And, people shouldn't imagine him as somebody that was just, sitting back in his executive office watching the world go by. He was in it with us. Yeah. He was in people's offices. He was in meetings. He was interested. He was sending notes to everybody. He was, I don't know how a single human being could have as much energy as he did. But I want people to know how much of an influence on all the parks that people know and love Marty had, and what an influence he was on everything. And that's kind of the point of that is he, he was there. Yeah. He was there for all of it.
Well, and you talked about his legacy earlier. I think his legacy is going to be all of the things that he touched at the parks. That a little bit of him is in all of that.
Yeah,
it is.
As is all the Imagineers who work on the things that they do in the parks. Like, everybody's got some hand in it, no matter how minor. Even Kevin, when you started, you were cleaning up stuff and doing, it was important too. It
is.
It takes a whole team to make something, especially like a park or an attraction, come together.
Right.
All right. So this is going to be an interesting one, and it's our last question, which is, if you could work at Disneyland. Now, I know, you might have worked at Disneyland already, but let's just pretend you could go back and you could do anything you want. Sky's the limit. It could be a real job. It could be a made-up job. Chuck, what would you do at Disneyland?
I would probably like to become involved in kind of like what Becky Klein does and what Dave Smith did, the archival stuff. I have a tremendous interest in Disney history. And as I mentioned, the people behind all of these stories. And I think I would go in that direction, not necessarily cleaning dishes at the Plaza Inn, but yeah.
Have you had the opportunity to go visit the archives and have the folks there help find material for anything?
No, I haven't. I've been to the Walt Disney Museum 2 years ago. There was that traveling show celebrating Disney's, what was it, 50th anniversary? No,
100, Disney 100. Yeah.
100th, Disney
Yeah.
100, yes, which is kind of a scaled down version of the Walt Disney Family Museum. But in terms of the archives, no. This is a little known fact, but I am a retired cast member myself. I worked at the Disney store for about 12 and a half years in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Wow.
In addition to my other job.
Yeah.
And kind of like Kevin, I was doing a lot of grunt work at the Disney store. I was kind of like the handyman. I would unclog toilets. I would fix vacuum cleaners. I would do carpentry work. I would change light bulbs, and then I would do shipment and stuff like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
You kept the magic alive is what you were doing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But yeah, I would, because of, what I've done over the last, I've covered Disney for over 40 years now, closer to 45 years. So I have accumulated a decent amount of knowledge and made friends like Kevin over the years. And so that's where I would go.
There you go. Kevin, what would you do? Would you just become a professional vacationer, not have to actually work since you've spent so much time?
There's a reason I retired, guys. No.
Yeah. Well, no, to answer your question, what would I do at Disneyland? I would be a Jungle Cruise skipper.
Ooh. Oh.
And I have my little model that I have from the model shop here of a Jungle Cruise boat.
There you
I would
go.
be a Jungle Cruise skipper. There was a time when I was in charge of the show writers at Imagineering where I used to have to approve new jokes and stuff. So the Jungle Cruise team would come up and try to make me laugh. It was hilarious. But that Jungle Cruise, as you know, it depends on the performance of the skipper. It's a live performance; it can make or break it. And I think the interaction with guests would be a lot of fun. And I love the jokes, and so that's what I do.
I think there's two things that make the Jungle Cruise, and they're both kind of interlinked. One is, of course, the skipper, 100%, but also if their microphone is working well, because sometimes you get on there and it's like, blah, 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 blah. But I will say, when we were there for the 70th. We wrote it twice. Crystal clear. So they've definitely done some work on that.
Yeah, they do a lot of audio work, and it's just a little nod to Kevin Lively. He used to be a Jungle Cruise skipper there, and we hired him into show writing and Imagineering. But it goes back to Marty. Marty and I went down because we were going to pick the best Jungle Cruise skipper for the Jungle Cruise Skipper Award. And Kevin Lively was the kind of skipper that was before he even started, he'd get into the boat and he would laugh. He was just hilarious that way. But it's all about timing and believability and everything. And it's just a good performance makes all the difference. And we reviewed a dozen Jungle Cruise skippers who were the finalists, and Lively just rose to the top, and he ended up becoming a show writer, Imagineering. But I love that attraction.
It takes a lot to be able to tell the same set of jokes with like you've never told it before.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what you need to do. That's exactly right. And you have to assume that even though some guest has been on it 50 times, somebody maybe this is their first time.
Yep.
So you have to be respectful of that.
Follow-up question for you as well, Kevin. What's your favorite Jungle Cruise joke?
Oh my gosh. That's a really good question. I guess I guess it's the classic joke where they get the point in the end.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
that is a good one. Well, Chuck, Kevin, thank you both so much for taking time out of your evening to talk with us. Chuck, where can people find this wonderful book of yours that you wrote, Marty, Mickey, and Me?
Well, Amazon.com would be the best place to purchase it. It's also available through Theme Park Press, which is the publisher of the book.
Also, what about that wonderful Animal Kingdom book that you referenced a couple times? I know we're a Disneyland podcast, but where can people find that?
Also, Amazon.com.
And what's the full title of that book?
The Unofficial History of Animal Kingdom.
I think I want to pick that up. I love learning about. Now, I'm a Disneyland fan. Obviously, I'm on a Disneyland podcast, but I read a history of like what it took to like get Disney World like open, and I learned so many cool things about that. And so I'm sure that this will be similar to that, because there's always the behind the scenes stuff that's going on and everything that it took to get it there. And you're like, it's amazing that this ever happened.
Yeah. I learned so much in researching that book. It was just phenomenal. The things that that's another great thing about the Imagineers. They open up about things, and they tell you to the exact detail, what they did and why they did it. And it's among my favorite books. Let's put it that way.
That's awesome.
And Kevin, where can people pick up your stuff if they want to read your stuff?
I think my book is out of print now. I think it had a pretty good run in 2019 when it came out, and so maybe you can find a used copy on Amazon or somewhere. I don't know.
All right, we'll have to try to do that then. Well, again,
you can borrow my copy.
Okay. Well, thank both of you for being on the show. I'm sure our listeners are just going to delight in hearing about Marty, and so thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Chuck.
You've heard us talk about our great experiences staying at the Howard Johnson in Anaheim. Well, we have partnered with them to offer our listeners some really great discounts. Weekly tiers can get 15% off their next stay. To take advantage of this discount, head on over to DLWeekly.net and click on the Howard Johnson logo. We did get it updated, so all you have to do is click on the logo on the website or go to our social media pages and click the link in our bios there, and the promo code is automatically applied for you.
It's okay. I'll be the only weekly tier without an answer. Make sure you send your questions to Producer James or Producer Vern at trivia@DLWeekly.net.
Welcome back to Trivia Land, where we've got those awesome listener-submitted questions, and we can find out how Teresa did all by herself with no tag to help her out. Teresa, how do you think you did?
I'm thinking I'm going to learn some new things, but we'll find out.
All right. Well, let's find out together, shall we? Your first listener-submitted question from listener Kim. When did the Skyway permanently close at Disneyland? You answered 1996.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, I was looking for November of 1994.
Oh, close.
So
I'm
close.
pretty proud of myself for
I
that.
was very proud of you for being that close. Well done. Okay. Your fourth regular round question from listener Shanna D. Can you name the three hosts of the Disneyland opening day broadcast? You were able to remember Ronald Reagan. The other two were Bob Cummings and Art Linkletter.
Oh, yes.
And your fourth and final regular round question from listener Christian S. There were two TWA Moonliners originally created. One ended up in Disneyland. Where did the other one end up? You said the TWA corporate office.
That was my best guess, but yes.
The correct answer that I was looking for was Kansas City. On the roof of TWA's Kansas City headquarters.
Woo! Okay. Phew.
Backstory on that one.
Why do you think I did well this week? This is not good.
Oh, because you knew that the Moonliner went to Kansas City or to the corporate office.
Kansas
That's
City,
really
but...
okay. When this question first came across the Trivia Land spreadsheet, I looked at it and said, "What the heck's a Moonliner?" So. So it's really cool that you, A, knew what it was, and then B, knew where it went. So backstory on this, in 1956, Howard Hughes added a 22-foot-tall version of the Disneyland Moonliner, known as the TWA Moonliner 2, atop the southwest corner of the TWA corporate headquarters building, located at 18th Street in Baltimore, near downtown Kansas City, Missouri.
You know what? I think I've seen photos of it, but I think you and I may have driven past it without realizing it on one of our many road trips.
No, it's very possible that we were just like, oh, look at that weird rocket over there, and just kept on going, because we've been by Kansas City, Missouri a couple times on different trips. So, in fact, we stopped there for barbecue once on our way to Arizona. So, if we'd have known, we could have paid more attention.
If we'd have known.
Yeah. And your bonus question tonight from listener Lauren G. What phrase is written in front of Sleeping Beauty's castle, and what is the name of the symbol? So you said that it was a compass, and you couldn't think of the phrase. So this is as you're walking up to the castle, and there's the big compass on the ground, and written around that compass is the phrase, When you wish upon a star, your dreams come true. And that symbol is known as the compass rose.
Oh, how sweet.
Well, listeners, how did you do listening at home? How do you think Teresa did? Do you have that perfect question that you'd really like us to ask on the air sometime? If you do, please feel free to send that in at dlweekly.net/trivia.
Well, we will be back next week with more Disneyland news and information.
And until then, go out and enjoy the parks.
And a special thank you to Sidel for editing the podcast, and also to Andy Mack for all of our wonderful character transitions.
Hello, I am Baymax, your personal podcast companion. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this episode? My scans indicate you have been a good weekly tier. Have a lollipop. Now excuse me while I let out some air. Goodbye.